So this sorghum right here is pretty much shot. All right, guys, I'm in Manhattan, Kansas. It is windy, it is cold, and it is wet. But it's also our last big push throughout Kansas to see plots. But we've had a lot of excess moisture, and what we're seeing now is just a really bad spot in the field. Now on the higher end behind us that we're going to go walk back to, it's actually a high yielding environment because it's out of that water. But in spots in fields, if you're driving down the road and you see a spot in the field, typically one of the issues that you want to look at as an agronomist to figure out what's going on is you want to know how well it drains water. We're going to jump to the back. We're going to walk through some of our forage products. We got a whole lot of travel this week. I think we were sitting down before I left home and calculating it out, and I think we're going to cover about 2,500 miles this week. We're going to see about 4 or 5 different trials. We're going to see a lot of different growers. We're going to do some at distance education for our sales team. We're going to be doing a lot of different things because, like I said, this is our last big push in the field, and we've got to capture it this year if we're going to capture it. So this is always a big stressful time in the industry. So what we have here, as you can see, I have a corridor cut. And that corridor, actually on both different sides, has different forage products. And these different forage products are going to fit each individual region and production style. One of our conventional midrib products. So when you look at this midrib right here, it's a very white color that you can see. When you turn it over, very white in color. That is a conventional midrib. And I call it a conventional midrib because when we go over to our other forage sorghums, and I call that a conventional midrib because when we pull up a BMR6, a brown midrib, as you can see here on the right hand side, you see that expression right here of that brown midrib. What that is doing is providing a lot less lignin in that plant. Now the less lignin means it has a little bit less cell structure to hold that plant up, but it makes it much more digestible to the animal. So it's kind of a balancing act. Do you take out some structure to get a little more performance and then go back and forth? Just like cars or anything else, you can get a little more performance out of it, but you got to give up a little bit of maybe some of that structure or some of that strength. But what you can do when you get a little bit more of this brown midrib, we put in the brachytic dwarf trait. Now the brachytic dwarf is a trait that is naturally within the sorghum, and so we breed with that brachytic dwarf characteristic to will shorten the overall plant height of it just by shortening the internodes. In terms of leaf size, it gives you a good leaf to stalk ratio, but you'll maintain the tonnage, shorten the plant up, and that helps compensate for any kind of structural issues you may be looking at from any kind of BMR. But I want to stay true to my word here and not just show you the nice things that we see. One of the things that we're looking at here is we're looking at forage sorghums that are a little past their prime. So we just looked at a couple of them, the conventional and the BMR, and they're in the middle of flowering and going into grain fill. And that's great. They're perfectly timed for that, for those hybrids. But what happens when forage sorghums go too long? When you allow them to go past their prime, where we really want to be in that soft dough stage, what happens then? So what we see behind me is actually what can happen. We can see here that we have an early season forage sorghum, and we have right here on the alleyway, we can see the brachytic dwarf right behind it, standing strong. But we see these plants starting to lodge over and lean over. We can see right here that some of these products that we have are already colored, and they are going to be going into grain fill, and they're going into soft dough or even coloring and ultimately maturing down. We can see here, right there, but we're not quite to black layer yet. So these seeds are not quite ready to go, but we're getting real close to being finished. Done in Manhattan, we're getting on the road. We're going to central Kansas and then southwest Nebraska, and then we're going to wrap up this big mad dash of tours, and then maybe we can get home and start looking at some data. All right, guys, we are in Larned, Kansas one last time. We're wrapping up this season. Again, it is cold, 45 degrees. It is wet. We've gotten over an inch of rain from this front. So the biggest questions we're going to be talking about with some growers today as we do this small event is how that's going to play out the rest of your crop. When I walk over here to the 2106, we can see on the medium early block, very good grain color, bright red color. We're progressing very nicely. Right now we're looking at 3189. This is a medium maturity, medium late maturity for us. It's starting to color. We're about maybe 65% colors. So we still have a couple more weeks that we need to push on through to get to black layer, and then ultimately we'll get to that dried down maturity. So these hybrids develop throughout the year based on growing degree days, which is a calculation of your highest temperature of the day and your lowest temperature of the day. There's a minimum temperature for these different crops, whether that's corn, cotton, soybeans, or grain sorghum. But if we drop below that minimum temperature, then we will not be able to accumulate the different nutrients and maturity levels that we need for a good harvest. When selecting a hybrid, we really need to look at the fact that if we're using a short season hybrid, we can use that on the back half of our planting window, and we can see how that would be a successful strategy this year with this early cold weather. And if we're planting a full season and we're going for those top end yields, like we can see with some of these experimentals that we have right here, as well as our 2275, which in this environment, 66 days is a pretty full season hybrid for this environment. But when we are looking at one of those, we got to get them on that front half. We got to get it into the early part of June. Okay, the last stop we have here, because we got people starting to trickle in. What we're doing today is we're doing a kind of COVID sensitive type of field day. So it's kind of a buffet style. So we're going to have everyone spread out and have different stations, and they're going to be able to progress through the field day at their own pace, and we'll be around to answer different questions. I got my mask in my pocket. We're going to get ready to go. But I just wanted to show you one last time. We're talking about maturity in this cold weather. We see behind us these iGrowth hybrids. They're all in that medium to medium early market, and that allows us to really kind of target this exact kind of environment. So even our fullest seasons that we are typically more concerned with look to have really progressed through the color cycle. We're going into some black layer on some of this earlier hybrids, the 1120, the 1142, but we're really looking at these as being able to finish out strong. It's going to be a great environment for us for yields. And traveling agronomists, next stop today, we're traveling another 4 hours today. We're going to get up into Nebraska, and we got another kind of buffet style field day, and we're going to be able to take a look at a lot of different hybrids up there. For the first time, we're going to be into Nebraska trials for some large-scale testing of iGrowth.